Hi scholars, good morning. Welcome to Tuesday. Today we are starting Unit 11, the Civil War, which is super exciting. Can't believe we already finished Unit 10, that went super fast, but the Civil War unit is a little bit longer. We're going to be on this for at least a few weeks. So this one, just take a deep breath. We're not going to have like another Edulastic assessment for a little bit. If you have not yet taken your Edulastic assessments, for Unit 9 and 10, please make sure that you're double checking and you're looking at that website for any active assessments you may have missed, either from my class or for math or for ELA. All right, guys, let's get our electronic readers loaded. So go ahead and click on the description box below. Let's have that out ready to go and we'll get started for the day. So a couple of reminders before we start. One is to complete any active assessments on Edulastic, as I just mentioned. iReady Math and Reading. Remember, we need 45 minutes of math and we need 45 minutes of reading a week. So at the end of the week, you should have 45 minutes of both. So make sure that you are working on iReady slowly. You could do maybe 10 minutes a day and you would meet that goal. Teachers are monitoring GoGuardian throughout the week. I just wanted to let you know this. So please make sure you're using your Chromebook as you would if you were in school, and make sure you're only going to appropriate sites. And also, we're going to have a great day and a great lesson. So let's get it. Okay, so our agenda today. So since we're starting a new unit, I want to do an overview of the unit so you can know what to expect, what we're going to be learning about. I'm going to state the objective. I will read chapter 1 to you. You're going to read chapter 2 on your own. I'm going to go over expectations for independent work, and then I'm going to give you some more reminders and goodbyes. So our Unit 11, the Civil War overview. So I'm really excited about this unit. It's one of my favorites. It's just very interesting and it covers a lot of really cool history. So this unit is spread up into basically two different parts. There's the section where we're talking about before the Civil War and then what happens during the Civil War. So this is toward the Civil War, some events that happen that we're going to go over, such as abolitionists, slave life and rebellions. We're going to talk about the Mason-Dixon line. You can kind of just pause the video to read all these different topics, but this is some of the things we're going to cover as we're learning prior to what happened before the Civil War. Then we're also going to talk about the actual war itself, and that's a lot about battles, generals, who won certain battles, who lost certain battles. So this is a big part of the unit. It's very thick and dense. So we're going to talk about Robert E. Lee. Of course, we're going to talk about Stonewall Jackson. We're going to talk about Fort Sumter. So there's just a ton of different little features that we're going to be addressing in this part of the unit. So a lot of information. Make sure that you're definitely staying on top of your reading and the videos. So our objective today. Today we're going to learn about slavery and what it was like to live as a slave in the early 1800s prior to the Civil War. And your objectives are, for chapter 1, I can explain how the invention of the cotton gin reinvigorated the institution of slavery. And I can explain the different types of jobs that were done by slaves. Okay, so we're going to talk about how the cotton gin pushed slavery forward, and how also the different types of jobs that were completed by slaves and what their life was like during this time. All right, so we're going to start with chapter 1, slavery. Your big question is, why did the demand for slaves increase in southern states? A remarkable anniversary. The date was July 3rd, 1826. As the 50th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence approached, a great drama was playing itself out in the homes of two of the men most responsible for that document. At Monticello in Virginia, Thomas Jefferson, now 83, slipped in and out of consciousness as he laid on his deathbed. And in Quincy, Massachusetts, John Adams, now 90, also near the end of his life. Would these two great patriots and former presidents live to see this 50th Independence Day? Americans everywhere hoped and prayed that they would. As midnight arrived, Thomas Jefferson stirred in his bed and whispered to a young relative, "This is the 4th." The young man nodded. Jefferson sighed contentedly. He said no more, and by noon he was gone. At that very moment in Quincy, Massachusetts, the roar of a cannon signaled the start of the town's celebration. John Adams struggled to utter what proved to be his last sentence. As granddaughter, bending close to the old man, was able to hear his final whispered words. "Thomas Jefferson still, sir." Before the sun had set, he too was gone. In their lifetime, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams had seen their beloved United States grow from a struggling group of new states into a strong, confident nation. During the 50 years following the Declaration of Independence, the United States had gained vast new lands and developed into a democracy that was a model for countries around the world. In one important way, however, America had not changed and was not a model at all. Almost from the beginning, even during colonial times, slavery had been a part of American life. When the 13 colonies became the first 13 states, nearly 1 in every 5 Americans was an African American. Nearly all African Americans were enslaved. By far, most of these slaves lived in the South. But there were slaves in the northern states too. At the time of the American Revolution, for example, 1 in every 10 New Yorkers were a slave. Slaves in the North worked mainly as house servants for rich families. Now, 50 years later, Southerners wanted to see slavery spread into the new Western territories as well. Remember, slavery is a system in which people are legally owned by another and forced to work without pay. For a short time after the Declaration of Independence was written, there seemed a slim chance that slavery might die out. That was partly because of the words that lie at the very heart of the Declaration. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. So how could people accept slavery and still live up to the words of the Declaration of Independence? A growing number of Americans, both Northerners and Southerners, believed that they could not. As John Adams wrote to his wife Abigail, "Slaves have as good a right to freedom as we have." Some Americans freed their slaves during the Revolutionary War era. Before long, all the northern states took steps to end slavery. The Northwest Ordinance banned slavery in 5 new western states. Congress ended the slave trade in 1808. The Constitution had provided for the end of the slave trade in 1808. No southern state went so far as to free all of the slaves, but a few made it easier for slave owners to free their slaves if they wished to. The former president, George Washington, owned many slaves at Mount Vernon, his home in Virginia. He and other slave owners who believed that slavery was strong declared that when they died, their slaves were to be set free. By the early 1800s, there were about 150,000 free African Americans. Most of them lived in the southern states. However, for most slaves in the South, freedom was still out of reach. But not everyone who believed slavery was wrong favored equal civil rights for freed African Americans. This was certainly true in the 5 new western states, to which the Northwest Ordinance applied. Ending slavery was one thing. Allowing African Americans to have full rights of citizens like voting, holding office, serving on juries, living where they wanted to live, working in whatever jobs they chose, that was something else altogether. While some people, such as Abraham Lincoln, did believe that the rights outlined in the Declaration of Independence extended to the people of color, free or enslaved, many did not. For many people, the notion of liberty had more to do with self-government and the possibility of rising up economically than with the removal of racial slavery or with equal rights for people of color, the cotton gin. So as I'm reading this next section, I want you to listen to how the cotton gin helped to reinvigorate and to keep slavery going, especially in the South. Despite progress, by 1810, almost no slave owners were willing to free their slaves. What caused the change in attitude? Slaves had become much more valuable. A new invention called the cotton gin now made it even more profitable to use slave labor to grow cotton. Southerners began growing cotton back in the mid-1700s. Cotton, however, was not an important crop at first. That's because the kind of cotton that grows best in the American South is filled with these sticky green seeds. Those seeds had to be removed before the cotton could be used. At that time, it took a single person a whole day to clean the seeds from just 1 pound of cotton. This increased the cost of Southern cotton a great deal. So most makers of cotton goods look to other parts of the world for their supply of raw cotton. In 1793, Eli Whitney, a young New Englander who liked to tinker with machines and solve problems, changed all that. That year, Whitney visited a Georgia plantation. The owner of the plantation showed Whitney some freshly picked cotton, complete with green seeds. She suggested that he might like to try to invent something that would remove the seeds more easily. Whitney did just that, and in only about 10 days. The invention was a system of combs and brushes and rollers small enough to fit into a small box. The contraption was powered by a turning handle. Later, Eli built a bigger machine that cleaned up to 50 pounds of cotton a day. Whitney called his machine a cotton engine, or cotton gin for short. Eli Whitney's invention made it possible for Southerners to sell their cotton cheaply. Factories in the North, and especially in the Great Britain, were now ready to buy all the cotton the South could grow. Soon, planters started large plantations on rich lands in the Mississippi and Alabama territories. Cotton quickly became the South's most important crop. By 1820, the South grew 100 times as much cotton as it had raised before Eli Whitney built his cotton gin. To grow this cotton, the plantation owners needed more laborers to plow, plant, cultivate, and harvest. As a result, slaves were in a greater demand than ever. The price of buying a slave doubled. Far from freeing their slaves, Southern planters now sought to buy more slaves. So now you're going to read chapter 2, and chapter 2 is all about the life of the slave and really focusing on how slaves started to resist in the South and kind of form an uprising against their slave owners. So for our work today, it says the United States of America and the Confederate States of America. So the directions. Color the states that remained in the United States of America orange, the states that joined the Confederate States of America green, and the territories yellow. So I know some of us might not have crayons at home, and if you don't, do not worry. You can still complete this activity by doing different patterns or different types of shading. So for example, I could color the Union States or I could shade the Union States, for example, in stripes. I might use Confederate States as polka dots, and I might do territories in like a little swirly design. So if you don't have crayons, don't worry about it. Or if you have different colors than what's mentioned in the directions, that's okay too. Basically do what you need to do to complete this activity. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. The purpose of this activity is to help give you an idea of how many slave states and Confederate states there were at this time versus Union states, just so you can kind of see the differences and which states weren't even states, they were just still considered territories. So this is just important for like your reference to help you visualize as we start to learn more about the Civil War going forward. All right, boys and girls, that is it for today. Reminder, complete any active assessments on Edulastic. iReady Math and Reading. We need 45 minutes of each subject a week. And complete math and ELA assignments and videos. And remember, we are monitoring Gold Guardian throughout the week. So if your tab mysteriously gets deleted from your computer, you'll know why. Please make sure that you are using your Chromebook as you would in school, and we're not visiting inappropriate sites that we wouldn't be using if we were in school, okay? Now do something fun, do something for you, be good, and I hope you have a great day.